The city never slept, but Lila did, on the bus, against walls, wherever she found a quiet corner between jobs. Life had taught her to move quietly, speak softly, and expect little. Her shift started at 10 p.m., just when the high-rise offices began to exhale their daily chaos, leaving behind empty desks and coffee-stained mugs for her to erase. She kept her head down as she moved from floor to floor. Her uniform was 2 sizes too big, her ID tag dangling loosely from a frayed lanyard. She liked the silence of night shifts. No one noticed her, no one asked questions. She could disappear into the rhythm of her work, wipe, sweep, dump, repeat. But tonight felt different. She was on the 34th floor, a level she rarely cleaned. Some temporary staffing error had shuffled the assignments. Her instructions were clear. Handle only the common areas. Avoid private offices unless absolutely necessary. She nodded to herself and moved quietly through the carpeted halls, pushing her cleaning cart like a slow-moving ghost. Most doors were closed. One stood ajar. It was a sleek black-paneled door with a brass nameplate she didn't bother reading. Maybe someone forgot to lock it. Maybe someone was still inside. She hesitated. Her cart's wheel squeaked. She peeked in. Empty. Still, something about the room pulled her in. The temperature dropped as she stepped through the threshold. The lighting was dim, motion sensors flickering on slowly, as if waking from sleep. This wasn't just any office. The air smelled faintly of leather and cologne. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a jaw-dropping view of the city skyline. A towering shelf of books stood against one wall, and near it, an expensive-looking sculpture of a bird, mid-flight, balanced on a pedestal. She took a few more cautious steps, the carpet muffling her every move. The desk at the center of the room was massive, obsidian black, spotless, intimidating. A laptop sat closed, perfectly aligned with a gold pen. Next to it, a crystal paperweight, and just beside that, a silver photo frame. Lila froze. The photograph called to her. It wasn't curiosity that made her reach for it. It was something deeper, like an echo from a memory she couldn't place. Her fingers brushed the metal. She picked it up, and her world tilted. It was her, younger by several years. Her hair was longer, sunlit and tangled. Her dress plain but neat. She was sitting cross-legged in a wildflower field, a book open on her lap, one hand shielding her eyes from the sun. She remembered that dress. She remembered that day. But she didn't remember anyone taking this photo. Her knees weakened. She sat on the edge of the desk, heart pounding in her throat. How could this be here? This wasn't just strange. It was terrifying. She turned the frame over, searching for a date, a name, a clue. Nothing. A low creak echoed from the hallway. Her heart stopped. Footsteps. No, 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 no. She scrambled up, knocking the pen to the floor. She set the frame back exactly as she found it. She hoped, and snatched her cart handle. The footsteps grew louder, closer. She didn't even look back. Out the door, down the hall. She hit the elevator button 3 times, then gave up and took the stairs. Her shoes slapped against the metal steps as she ran, adrenaline fueling her descent. She didn't stop until she reached the parking level. Breathless, she ducked behind a column, hands shaking, mind racing. She'd only cleaned the desk. She didn't break anything. She hadn't stolen anything. But that photograph, why was it there? Why did someone important enough to work in that office, have a photo of her? A memory flashed. That field. That day. She had been alone. Hadn't she? Lila leaned against the cold concrete wall, trying to breathe. She had no family left. No one who would keep an old photo like that, especially not in a high-rise office with floors above her pay grade. She'd worked at this building for almost a year. No one had ever looked at her twice. Until now. Something wasn't right. Someone knew her. Someone important. Back on the ground floor, Lila signed out at the janitor's logbook with trembling hands. The security guard didn't notice. Or if he did, he didn't care. She muttered a quick goodnight and stepped into the night. The city's neon glow swallowing her. The bus ride home was a blur. She sat by the window, watching reflections flicker on the glass. Her face stared back at her, older, more tired, but unmistakably the same as the girl in that photo. By the time she reached her apartment, one bedroom, barely heated, her thoughts had looped 100 times. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she had a twin. Maybe it wasn't even her, but she knew it was. She curled into bed, hugging her knees beneath the threadbare blanket. Sleep didn't come easy. When it did, it came with dreams she hadn't had in years, of that sun-drenched field, the rustle of grass, a shadow in the distance watching her. She woke with a jolt. The sun hadn't risen yet. Something told her this wasn't over, and she was right. The next night, she didn't want to go back, but rent wasn't optional. Fear didn't cancel bills. She wore the same uniform, carried the same cart, took the same bus. But every step felt heavier, like she was walking toward a secret she hadn't agreed to discover. She told herself she'd stick to the checklist. Just the common areas, no detours, no unlocked doors. Still, as she reached the 34th floor again, her feet slowed. The black paneled door was shut this time, but she could feel it, like a hum beneath her skin. Someone was inside. She turned, away quickly, pushing her cart in the opposite direction. She didn't want to know. Not tonight. But halfway down the hall, a voice stopped her. "Excuse me." Low. Calm. Masculine. She turned. A man in a dark suit stood by the open door. She recognized him from the building's giant digital directory, a face too polished to forget. Adrian. Wolf, Dutch CEO. The same man whose office she'd entered last night. Her throat tightened. "I believe you cleaned my office yesterday," he said. She froze. "Lie. Tell him no. Say you didn't. I didn't mean to." The door was open. I thought. He raised a hand gently, silencing her panic. "I'm not angry." His voice was strange, gentle, but watchful, like he already knew what she would say. "I just have a question," he said, stepping forward slowly. Lila's breath caught. He was holding something behind his back, and when he brought it forward, it was the photo, her photo. She stared at it, then at him. "Do you remember this?" he asked. She wanted to lie, but the words died on her tongue. "Yes," she whispered. "I just don't remember anyone taking it." Adrian studied her. "You were 17, he said. "A storm came shortly after this was taken. You got lost in the hills for 2 hours before someone found you." Her blood turned cold. "How do you know that?" He didn't answer. Not directly. "I've been looking for you," he said instead. "For a long time." Lila didn't go back to the 34th floor, not for 2 nights. She stuck to her assignments, kept her head down, and avoided anything that looked like a polished black door. But her thoughts refused to stay quiet. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the photo, her photo, in Daniel Reed's hands. The man said he'd been looking for her. He said he knew things no one should know, and he hadn't explained anything. No one at work talked about Daniel Reed. Most had never even seen him. He was a name, a title, a presence that lived in polished silence and expensive shadows. The man who owned the building, and maybe the lives inside it. But Lila had seen him, had spoken to him, and the way he'd looked at her. She didn't know if she should feel scared or something else. On her night off, she sat in the corner of her apartment with her old laptop on her knees, wrapped in a faded blanket. The heat barely worked, and the hum of traffic outside her window never stopped. But tonight, the noise didn't bother her. She typed slowly. Daniel Reed, CEO, Wolf Corporation. The search results were cold and clean. Forbes articles, business reviews, a few black and white portraits from 10 years ago. He'd taken the company from a crumbling legacy firm to one of the top real estate giants in the country. But there was almost nothing personal. No interviews, no charity galas, no social media, no recent photos. The most recent image she found was dated 7 years ago. Daniel, standing next to a construction site, sunglasses hiding most of his face. That was it. 7 years. A blank space. She leaned back and stared at the screen. Why did someone like him have a photo of her from almost a decade ago, and why did he say he'd been looking for her? The next night, she clocked in with her usual quiet nod to the front desk. No one looked twice at her. That's how she liked it. But something was off. When she opened her locker, she froze. There, sitting neatly on top of her lunchbox, was a small package, wrapped in brown paper. No note. Her name wasn't written on it, but it was sitting inside her locker. No one else had the key. Hands shaking, she unwrapped it. Inside was a book. Not just any book. It was the exact edition of Wuthering Heights she'd lost when she was 15, soft, weathered, with a red fabric cover and gold-stamped spine. She opened it and gasped. There was her name, written in faded ink on the inside cover in her old handwriting. Lila June Marsh. She hadn't seen this book in over a decade. It had been hers at the orphanage. The only thing that made her feel real during those hollow, hungry years. How could someone possibly find it now? She pressed the book to her chest and sank down on the bench, heart racing. Someone knew her. Not just her face. Her past. Later that night, she pushed her cleaning cart into the empty elevator. She pressed the button for the 12th floor, her assigned area, and watched the doors begin to close. Then they stopped. They slid open again, but no one was there. She waited. Still nothing. Then, slowly, the elevator moved. Not to the 12th floor, but to the 34th. Her pulse quickened. She reached to press another button, but her hand hovered. She could get off. Just for a second. Just to look. The elevator dinged. She stepped out. The hallway was quiet, the carpeted floor muffling. Every sound. The lights overhead flickered slightly, the silence so heavy she could hear her own heartbeat. The black-paneled office door was closed. She turned to go, but then she saw it. Down the hall, on the bench near the fire exit, a folded piece of paper, drawn. To it like a string pulling her chest, she approached slowly. The paper was blank on the outside. She opened it. Inside was a sketch, her, sitting in that wildflower field again. Except this time, she was smiling, eyes closed, wind in her hair, drawn in pencil, soft and tender. It wasn't just a photo someone had found. Someone had remembered her. Someone who had seen her. She pressed the paper to her chest as she stepped back into the elevator. Back in the janitor's closet, she locked the door and sat on an overturned bucket, pulling the sketch into the light again. Tears burned in her eyes. And then, without meaning to, her mind drifted. Back to the orphanage. She hadn't let herself remember that place for a long time. It had been small, old, forgotten by most of the world. She remembered the cold showers, the tasteless food, the scratchy uniforms, and the hill behind the buildings, wild with grass and yellow flowers. It had been the only place that felt like hers. She used to take her book there, sit under the tree, and read until the bell rang for chores. And sometimes, he'd sit beside her. A boy with messy black hair and a bruised heart. He never talked much. but he watched everything. Eyes like storm clouds. Always watching her like she was the only light left in his world. He had once given her a smooth stone, shaped like a heart, so you don't forget. And then one day, he was gone. She never learned where or why. Just gone. Her fingers trembled around the sketch. She hadn't remembered that boy in years. Not even his name. But now she could feel it, somewhere deep inside her, that this wasn't coincidence. The book, the photo, the drawing. All roads were leading her backward, to that hill, to that promise. I'll protect you, always. She never thought he meant it. For the next few nights, her world became a loop of fear and longing. She began to feel watched, but never directly. Once, while wiping windows on the 26th floor, she saw a shadow move behind a conference room wall. No footsteps, no voices, just a sense. Another night, the elevator opened again with no one inside. This time, it didn't move. It just waited. Sometimes, when she paused near the glass walls, she could feel eyes on her from somewhere above. Not threatening, not cruel, just there. Like someone was waiting for her to remember, and slowly, she was. One night, after her shift, she returned home to find something taped to her apartment door. A small envelope. Inside, a note. Just 6 words. Come back to the field. Alone. No name, no signature. But she didn't need one. She knew who it was, she just didn't know how. The envelope was thicker than usual. Lila found it on her locker shelf, resting perfectly in the center like someone had measured its placement. Cream-colored, with gold leaf along the edges, and sealed with an embossed emblem. A wolf, surrounded. By laurel leaves. Wolf Corporation. She stared at it. Her name was handwritten on the front in beautiful looping script, Lila Marsh, as if the person had taken their time. Her hands trembled as she broke the seal. Inside, the invitation was printed on heavy cardstock that smelled faintly of cedar and something older, harder to name. You are cordially invited to a private dinner hosted by Mr. Daniel Reed, Thursday 11 p.m., Executive Suite, 34th floor. No reason, no explanation, just her name, just the time. Her first instinct was to crumple it and walk away. She wasn't the type to attend dinners with billionaires in private suites. She wasn't even the type to speak in meetings or look people in the eye. But the card sat heavy in her palm, and something in her chest, a deep, aching thing, whispered that this wasn't about dinner. It was about him, and about something long forgotten, waiting in the shadows of her past. She spent the day pacing her apartment, unable to sleep. The invitation sat on the table like a silent dare. She made tea, forgot to drink it, changed clothes, changed again. Tried to imagine walking into that suite and not breaking into pieces. By 10:30, she was still sitting by the window, staring out at the flickering skyline. But she knew. She would go, because no matter how much her brain screamed, no, her heart had already taken a step forward. She changed into the nicest thing she owned, a dark blue blouse and the only pair of jeans without stains. Her shoes were old, but polished. Her hair, usually pulled back, was down tonight. She didn't know why. 10:55 p.m., she entered the building. The security guard didn't stop her. He nodded as if expecting her. The elevator opened the moment she stepped into the lobby. No buttons were pressed. It carried her to the 34th floor in silence. Her reflection stared back at her in the polished steel walls. Nervous, wide-eyed, lost. Then the doors opened. She stepped out into a hallway she'd only cleaned before, but tonight it looked different. The lights were warmer. Soft music played in the background. And at the far end of the corridor, the black-paneled door stood open. Waiting. The suite was unlike anything she had imagined. Soft lighting, cream-colored walls, an entire wall of windows offering a sweeping view of the sleeping city. A fireplace crackled gently near a low leather couch. A single table was set for two, a candle flickering between fine china and crystal glasses. She stepped in slowly, the door shutting behind her with a soft click. She stood still, unsure of what to do. Then she saw him, Daniel Reed. He stood by the window, back to her, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass of deep red wine. He wore no tie, just a dark shirt with the top button undone, and his sleeves rolled halfway up his forearms. His presence filled the room. He turned slowly. Their eyes met, and Lila froze. There was something about his face, those eyes, cold steel, with a flicker of something burning beneath. He didn't smile. Not yet. "Thank you for coming," he said. His voice was calm, measured, the same as before. "I wasn't sure I would," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I know." He gestured to the table. "Please sit." She moved stiffly, like every step was through water. He pulled out her chair with quiet grace, then took the seat across from her. Dinner was already served, steamed vegetables, roasted chicken with lemon glaze, and a side of something fancy she couldn't name, but she couldn't eat. Not yet. Not while he looked at her like that, like he knew her. But he didn't mention the photo, didn't mention the book or the sketch. He poured her water, waited. Finally, she broke the silence. "Why am I here?" He tilted his head slightly, as if he'd been waiting for the question. "Because I wanted to talk to you," he said. "Away from the noise." Lila gripped her glass. "You could have just said something." "I clean floors, Mr. Reed. I'm not exactly—" He interrupted gently. "You're not just anything, Lila." The way he said her name made her chest tighten. "You work hard. You vanish into the background. You watch everything, but you never let anyone in." His voice lowered. "You've always been like that." She blinked. "Always?" He paused. "You were quiet back then, too." Her heart skipped. But he didn't explain. Instead, he leaned forward slightly. "Tell me about you. What do you want? What do you dream of?" Lila frowned. "No one's ever asked me that. I'm asking now." She stared down at her plate, untouched. "I wanted to be a teacher," she said quietly. "Books were the only thing that made sense. When I was little, I'd pretend the classroom was full even when I was alone. And now? Now I clean up after other people's dreams," she said with a small, bitter laugh. But when she looked up, he wasn't smiling. He was watching her, as if the words hurt him. "I've never stopped dreaming," she added. "But dreaming feels dangerous." He nodded slowly. "Sometimes it is." They sat in silence for a moment, and for the first time, it wasn't heavy. It was warm, curious, like a string being pulled tighter between them, one heartbeat at a time. Never looked away, and neither did she. When dessert came, she finally asked the question that burned beneath her skin. "Why me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and walked to the fireplace, swirling the wine in his glass. She watched him carefully. "You remind me of someone," he said. "Someone I lost." Lila felt her throat tighten. "Someone from before." "You were CEO?" she asked. He turned to her slowly. "I've been looking for you for 10 years, he said softly. Her breath caught. The world narrowed to that single moment. 10 years. The orphanage. The boy. The promise. The stone shaped like a heart. She rose from her chair, unsure what was real anymore. "Are you saying—" He stepped closer, but he didn't touch her. He just looked at her like a man drowning in memories. "You disappeared," he whispered. "They moved you to a different home. I tried to find you, for years. But you were always just out of reach, her." Knees buckled and she sat down again. The memories crashed over her now, the storm, the separation, the promise she'd buried. He hadn't forgotten, and neither had she. The city below flickered like stars had fallen and refused to burn out. Lila sat beside the tall windows of Daniel's private suite, her knees pulled to her chest, her coffee long gone cold. Daniel stood nearby, silent, waiting, watching her. With eyes that held too much history, she whispered, "Tell me everything." He didn't hesitate. "You were 13, he began, "and I was 14. We were both in St. Eileen's home. You'd been there almost your whole life. I'd only been there for 2, but we were always together," he said, quieter now. "Every day, every hour. You used to read to me under the tree behind the dining hall. You hated loud places. I hated everyone but you." Lila pressed her forehead to her knees, breath shallow. "One day," he continued, "there was a storm. You went missing for hours. I found you near the greenhouse, lying on the ground, blood on your face. The building behind you was in flames." Her heart skipped. She felt it again. Something hot. Something choking. Daniel's voice softened further. "They told me you were being sent to a hospital, then to a new family. No one would tell me where. They said I had to forget you. It was better for you." Lila's chest burned. "I didn't remember," she whispered. "Not the fire. Not you. Just flashes. I never stopped looking," he said. "Even after I left the system, even after I built all of this." She looked at him, eyes wide. "You built this empire just to find me?" He gave a half smile. "I built it to survive. But I kept looking for you. The whole time." Over the next few nights, they met in secret. Not because they had to, but because it felt like a fragile dream neither of them wanted to share with the world just yet. They'd meet on the rooftop of the building, or in his suite after hours. Sometimes they'd sit in silence, just drinking tea. Other times he'd ask her to read aloud to him, like she used to when they were kids. He remembered every detail, how she used to hold her book too close to her face. How she always paused at sad chapters and pretended something was in her eye, and she began to remember him. Not as the man in the suit, but as the boy with scraped knees and eyes too sad for his age. The boy who never spoke unless it was to her. The boy who once cried when she gave him her last piece of bread. And slowly, warmth bloomed between them. Unspoken feelings curled between every shared glance. Daniel was different with her, gentler. He still moved like a man with power, but when she was near, something softened in him. Like the weight of years disappeared for a moment. And she felt seen for the first time in her life. But not all memories come gently. One night, she dreamed of smoke. She was back in that field, but the flowers were burning. The sky above her was gray and choking. Somewhere nearby, someone screamed. She woke, gasping, her sheets soaked with sweat, and for the first time, she remembered. The fire. The panic, hands pulling her from the flames, someone whispering her name, someone trying to hold on, and someone else trying to tear them apart. The next night, she went to Daniel's suite without waiting for an invitation. He opened the door before she knocked. "I remember," she whispered. "The fire." He stiffened. "Someone said it," she said. "Didn't they?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I've always believed they did." Lila stepped inside, the door closing behind her with a hush. "I saw someone that night," she said. "I couldn't see the face, but they were angry. They told me I didn't belong with you, that you were dangerous, that I needed to forget you." Daniel sat on the edge of the couch, his hands folded tight. "I always suspected it," he said. "One of the administrators hated us being close, said we were too attached. I was too protective. You were too soft." Lila's stomach turned. Someone tried to separate us for good, and they nearly did. he whispered. After that night, the air between them changed. It wasn't just nostalgia anymore. It was something deeper, something electric. They met more often, spent longer hours together. Once he reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. They walked the quiet halls of the 34th floor together after hours, the city their only witness. He showed her a locked drawer in his desk. Inside was her photo, the one from the field, now framed in silver. "I took it," he said simply, "the day before they sent you away." She touched the glass. Her heart ached. "I wish I could have remembered sooner." "You did," he said. "You just didn't know it yet. But memories, once unlocked, can't be hidden again. And the deeper Lila reached into her past, the more shadows she found. She remembered hiding in closets, afraid of voices in the hall. She remembered being told she was lucky to be adopted. She remembered crying for someone she couldn't name, night after night, until one day. The crying stopped. Not because she forgot him, but because she stopped believing he existed. Daniel grew quieter the more she remembered. His eyes, always steady, now flickered with something darker. Regret, guilt, pain. One evening, as she poured them tea in his suite, she asked, "Why didn't you ever stop?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Because I lost everything once, and I swore I'd never lose you again." Her throat tightened. "And if the truth is worse than we remember?" She asked. "I'll still protect you," he said, "even from the past." The night was quiet. Too quiet. Lila stood alone in Daniel's office, surrounded by shadows and glass. The city lights outside painted silver bars across the floor like a cage. She hadn't meant to stay late. She was only supposed to leave. A note. But the room was open, and something about the silence pulled her in. It still smelled like him. Cedar, ink, and rain. She crossed to the desk, fingertips trailing the polished edge. Then she saw it. A drawer she hadn't noticed before. Small. Built into the back corner, almost hidden by a sliding panel. The lock was already disengaged, as if it was meant for her. She hesitated, then pulled. Inside were folders, photographs, letters, dozens of them. Some worn with age, some pristine, labeled in Daniel's clean, sharp handwriting. The first photo, on top, stopped her breath. It was her, at 13, standing in front of the old orphanage. Arms crossed, eyes full of distrust. Underneath it, another. Her sitting on the hospital bed, bandaged, barely awake. Someone had taken it from outside the room. A long-distance shot zoomed in. She flipped faster now, photos of her at different ages. School photos, grocery store cameras, bus stops. One file labeled Marsh, Lila, Trail, 2013-2022. A sick feeling formed in her chest. He had been tracking her. She pulled out a stack of printed emails and memos, communication logs between Daniel's company and private investigators. Still, no match on current identity. Adoptee paperwork incomplete. Suspect falsified documents. She blinked. Falsified? A heavier folder lay at the bottom of the drawer, black, sealed with a red wax sticker. She broke it open. Inside, an old adoption form. Her name, her date of birth. But the adoptive parents' names were redacted. No court stamps, no approval codes, just a note at the bottom. Status: illegal transfer, possible trafficking cover. Do not escalate until subject is located. Lila staggered back, her pulse roaring in her ears. This wasn't just about Daniel finding her. This was about everything, being a lie. The door clicked. She turned fast. Daniel stood there, his tie loose, eyes instantly narrowing at the open drawer. "You went through my things," he said quietly. "You were watching me," she shot back. "For years." He didn't deny it. "You traced me like I was a project, a mission." His voice stayed calm, but his shoulders were tense. "You were missing, Lila. No one else was looking. You knew about the adoption? I found out later. And you didn't tell me? Daniel stepped closer, slowly, like he was approaching a wild animal. His voice dropped to a whisper. I was going to. I was just afraid. Afraid I'd leave. He didn't answer, and that was enough. Lila's voice cracked. Was this all just some obsession? Were you trying to save me or own me? Daniel flinched, like she'd slapped him. No, he said. I loved you, even when I didn't know what love meant. I loved you when we were kids, and I never stopped. I would have burned the world to bring you home. But this, she held up the file. This is not love. His face broke, the control slipping for the first time. I didn't manipulate your life. I didn't plan for you to walk through that door. But when you did, I wasn't letting you disappear again. The silence between them stretched, thick and trembling. Lila turned away. I don't know if I can trust you now. Daniel didn't follow her. He just said, I understand. She left the office, her heart hollow. The building's halls were quiet. Too quiet for this late hour. Lila felt a strange chill trail her spine, as if someone was walking right behind her. She turned. Nothing. She took the stairs instead of the elevator. As she reached the 22nd floor landing, she paused, her hand on the rail, breath-catching. A figure, darting across the hallway below. Not Daniel, not security, someone else. She ducked low, peering through the gaps in the stair railing. The person moved like they knew the layout. Like they belonged, but their face was hidden beneath a hood. Lila's stomach turned, a flicker of memory clawed back, a smell of smoke, the crunch of fire underfoot, a whisper in her ear. He'll destroy you, just like he destroyed them, all. Same whisper, the same presence. Someone from her past wasn't just watching. They were inside, and they wanted her gone. The wind screamed across the rooftop as Lila stood under the blinking red aviation light, the city glowing far below. She hadn't slept. The file still haunted her. The photos, the evidence. Daniel's voice, trembling in the office. I didn't plan for you to walk through that door, but someone else had. She felt it now, like she was a piece in a story that began long before she stepped into it. A sound behind her made her turn. He was tall. Worn coat, sharp eyes, not young, not old, the kind of man who blended into crowds, but never disappeared. Don't scream, he said, showing his palms. I'm not here to hurt you. Lila stepped back, heart hammering. Who are you? Someone who used to work for Daniel Reed, and someone who knows what he did to find you. They sat in the empty boardroom, the city behind them, the lights overhead off. He called himself Mark Heller, ex-security chief, ex-operational lead, disgraced, fired 5 years ago. Because I asked too many questions, he said. About you. Lila's breath caught. What do you mean? He placed a file on the glass table. Thin, gray, government-stamped. Daniel didn't just search for you, Mark said. He funded entire investigations, paid off systems, buried people. You're lying. I wish I was. Mark's eyes held no glee. Do you know how many laws were broken trying to erase the original adoption trail? Do you know how many people vanished to keep you from being found? Lila felt cold. He was a child. He didn't do this. Mark shook his head. He was a child who became a man with power. He bought the people who took you, and when they didn't give you up, he destroyed them. Her stomach turned. No, she whispered. He was trying to save me. And he crossed every line to do it, Mark said. Do you really know him, Lila? Or do you just want to believe the boy from the orphanage still exists? She didn't answer. because she wasn't sure anymore. That night, she didn't return. To Daniel. She walked the streets instead, trying to make sense of everything. Her heart twisted in two directions. One side still felt the warmth of Daniel's touch, the boy who whispered promises under an old oak tree. The other heard Mark's voice warning her of shadows too deep to see. She passed an alley, paused, and that's when everything spun. A van, a hand, the scent of chemicals. The world went black. Daniel's suite was silent. He stood before the security monitors, rewinding footage, eyes sharp, jaw clenched. Lila hadn't answered her messages. Her phone had stopped pinging. Then he saw it. A van, white, nondescript, pulling away from the curb near the building. He hit the emergency override, called his security chief, issued lockdown orders. Then he saw the back door, forced open. He knew. She was gone. They moved fast. The security team swept the building. Daniel hacked into street cams with a code only he and one other ever knew. Mark Hellers, the same man he'd fired. The same man who had vanished with files Daniel thought were buried. He saw the van's plates, and his face paled. Heller had her. Lila awoke in a cold room, her hands tied loosely. Her head throbbed. Mark sat across from her, arms folded. "This isn't how it was supposed to go," he muttered. "You drugged me," she said, voice hoarse. "I saved you. You kidnapped me. I'm trying to show you the truth." He reached for a nearby folder, threw it down. Daniel Reed didn't just rebuild your trail. He erased everyone else's, people who helped, people who tried to stop him. You. "Think I care?" she snapped. "You hurt me because you want to make me hate him." "I hurt you to keep you alive." She glared at him, unflinching. "Then let me go." Daniel's car tore through the city. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He answered. "Where is she?" Mark's voice was calm. "You always did think she belonged to you. She's not yours to use, and she's not yours to fix." Daniel's fingers tightened around the wheel. "You lied to her," Mark said. "And now she knows." There was a pause, then Daniel's voice dropped, cold. "If you touch her again, I'll end you." Mark hung up. Daniel drove faster. Back in the room, Lila studied the ropes on her wrists. Mark had tied them loose on purpose. She slid her hands free, just as a bang echoed outside the building. Gunfire, shouts. The walls shook. A second later, the high door burst open, and Daniel stood there, wild-eyed, furious. Behind him, security agents flooded the hallway. He ran to her, pulled her up. She flinched, but he didn't let go. "You came for me," she whispered. "I always will," he breathed. Mark was caught, dragged down by two guards, blood on his lip, rage in his eyes. "This isn't over," he spat at Daniel. "She'll never look at you the same again." Daniel didn't answer. He just turned, shielding Lila with his body. Hours later, they sat in his suite. The storm outside tapped against the glass. Lila sipped tea in silence. Her wrists bore faint red marks. Daniel sat across from her, still dressed, in the torn shirt from the rescue. He hadn't spoken much, just watched her, waiting. She finally looked at him. "Tell me everything." And this time, he did. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Lila sat by the fireplace in Daniel's private suite, wrapped in one of his sweaters, her eyes fixed on the photo in her lap. The same one that had started it all. The same one she found on his desk that night when she walked through the wrong door. Her younger self looked back at her from the field of wildflowers. A book in her lap, bare feet tucked beneath her. That quiet, unreadable smile. She could feel that moment now, not clearly but enough. The sound of grass brushing as someone sat beside her. A boy's voice. "If we ever get separated, I'll find you. I swear." Daniel stood behind her now, silent, not touching, just Waiting. She turned the photo toward him. You took this, didn't you? His voice was soft. Yes. I didn't know anyone was watching. I wasn't watching, he said. I was remembering. She studied him, her voice quiet. You carried this all these years? He nodded. It reminded me of the last day I saw you. She blinked. The fire. He hesitated. They set it on purpose. To hide you. Her breath caught. The adoption. Network? Daniel's jaw tightened. It wasn't just a network. It was a system. People who profited from selling children off the books. When I got old enough, I found out what happened. I used everything. Money, connections, investigators. I tore them down, one piece at a time. But I could never find you. Until that night. Lila held the photo tightly. It's all so much, she whispered. I know. Her eyes filled. But why didn't you just tell me? Daniel moved closer, kneeling in front of her. Because I didn't want to become the next person who took away your choices. She looked down. I didn't want you to stay because of a shared past. I wanted you to stay if you chose me. Not because I found you, but because your heart did. Lila reached out, her fingers brushing his. I was scared I'd never remember you. Daniel gave a soft smile. You don't have to. She tilted her head. Because I never forgot you, he said. That's enough for both of us. A week passed. Mark Heller was arrested by federal agents. With Daniel's help, the illegal adoption files were turned over to authorities. Lila's records were cleared, her identity restored. No more shadows, no more secrets. She wasn't a mystery anymore. Daniel's company returned to normal, but something had shifted in him. He canceled meetings, delegated authority, spent more time walking through the building like an ordinary man, not a billionaire. And every time he saw Lila, whether in the hallway, in the cafeteria, or in the quiet corners of the building, they shared something unsaid, something unbreakable. One evening, she found him standing by the rooftop garden. He didn't turn when she approached. I never knew what kind of future I was chasing, he said softly. I thought maybe if I saved you, I'd save myself. Lila stepped beside him. You didn't save me, she said. His jaw tensed. You reminded me I was worth saving. He turned to her now. And I choose you, she said. Not because I remember the field, or the fire, or the boy who made a promise. She reached for his hand. But because every time I look at you, it feels like home. Daniel closed his eyes, and when he opened them, they were wet. Later that night, back in her small but now sunlit office, Lila sat at her desk. In front of her, a framed photo, the same photo. Only now she placed it gently on her own desk. Not hidden, not a secret, because this time, she was no longer searching for who she used to be. She had found who she was becoming, and this time, she would never disappear again.